This is the Audio Fit Test Podcast, where we change the game for beginners to health and fitness. No fads, no gimmicks, just solid advice that will get you results. In this episode, we will jump into circuit training and how you can start this fat-burning powerhouse of a training method from your own home. Here's Jim of jimshealthandmuscle.com, the guy who gave up a decent job to follow a pipe dream.
Okay, hi again. This is Jim from jimshealthandmuscle.com and audiofittest.com. And in this episode, I'm going to ramble on about circuit training. Now, in my opinion, this is a really solid training method for anyone who wants to work out to lose fat and tone up. It's great for people who want to use minimum equipment. It's great for people who want a quick, intense training session. It's also good if you want to spice up your regular routine, and it can be used as a standalone training method, or you can just throw it in now and again. Now, the pros for circuit training, the list goes on and on. So what actually is circuit training, and how is it different from any other form of training? Well, circuit training is focused on intensity and stamina. Let's imagine that you go to the gym or start your home workout session, and after your warm-up, you start your first exercise set. Now, for the purpose of this podcast, let's say that this is push-ups. So the first exercise you do is push-ups. So you get into the position and you push out 12 reps in textbook form, obviously, because form's the number one thing to look at. So you've done 12 perfect push-ups. You'll then stand up, you'll have a short break while stretching those pecs off, because push-ups works your pecs. But then after this short break, you'll then assume the starting position again and knock out another 10 to 12 reps, or however many reps you're training for in that set. And then you'll have another short break. Now, typically, you'll do this for maybe 3 times and complete 3 sets of push-ups before moving on to your next exercise. This next exercise might be bodyweight squats, for instance. And you'll do 3 sets of bodyweight squats and then move on to another exercise where you'll also do 3 sets. And this pattern will continue until you've done maybe 7 to 10 exercises. And that's a good workout. But with circuit training, you'll only typically do 3 to 4 sets in your entire workout. So it's a real cakewalk, because it takes you less than half the time to train than your regular session would. Okay, this is kind of true, but I was being a little bit flippant. That's the theoretical way of looking at it anyway. The practical way of looking at it is that a circuit is one set, but that set includes multiple exercises without rest between. So a simple bodyweight circuit for home workouts might look like this. So as you would do with your traditional workout, you do your warm-up and you get ready for your first set. But your first set, instead of 12 push-ups as we talked about before, this time your first set will be push-ups. You'll do 12. You'll have no rest. You'll go immediately on to chins or assisted chins. You'll do 12 of those. You'll have no rest and you'll go straight on to squats. You'll maybe do 12, 15, 20, whatever amount of squats. Then you will have no rest. You'll go on to dips. You'll do a set of dips. You'll have no rest. You'll go straight on to burpees. You'll have no rest after burpees. You'll go straight on to crunches. So that's one set in a typical circuit training setup. So to sum this up, with circuit training, and that being your first set, you'll have no rest between the exercises, and by the time you've finished one set, you will have done a total of 72 reps. Now, once you finish your last crunch on that particular exercise routine that I've just outlined, you can then have a short break. Now, a short break in this scenario means around 1 to 2 minutes. So it's a good idea to have like a stopwatch handy. because after training like this, when it comes to a rest point, the rest period can fly by and you can lose track, especially later on in the workout when you're on like your third or your fourth set of circuit training. So during this rest period, you should stretch out, keep moving about. I don't mean go for a run or something. Just don't lie down on the floor and close your eyes, or staying active is good because your body doesn't cool down. Now the blood keeps flowing, your heart rate stays in the training zone, so just keep it moving and be aware and just be ready for your next set. Now, as you can see here, each set or each circuit only lasts for around 2 minutes. So if you do 4 sets or 4 circuits in your exercise sessions, you'll only be working for about 8 minutes. But these 8 minutes will be real hard work. Well, they could be, depending on how you set the circuit up, but that's the theory. It's short, sharp, and it's effective. But it is a little bit cheeky to boot. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about circuit training. I've heard all sorts, but some of the most common are that circuit training is most beneficial to females. I've heard that it's only used for burning fat and you can't build muscle from training this way. I've also heard that circuit training isn't for beginners. Okay, so circuit training is most beneficial to females. No. Anyone can benefit from circuit training. The bottom line here is that everyone can find use in their training for some kind of circuit at some point, no matter what gender you happen to be. Building muscle, burning fat, or working to a specific sporting goal is based on individual abilities and aspirations rather than gender. But there are obviously different hormones that present different challenges in fitness when it comes to gender. But I'm not a biologist, and for the purpose of this podcast, and at the level that I want to talk about, I think the differences between gender is negligible when it comes to circuit training, and the vast majority of all the fitness and exercise field. But moving on to the next argument, that you can't build muscle with circuit training. Actually, there was a point in my life when I would have been of the same belief, but I'd like to believe I've got a little bit older and a little bit wiser so I can come to a better understanding of it now. Now, there is an element of truth to this statement, but in my opinion, it's not strictly true that you can't build muscle with circuit training. I would say that it's not optimal for building like bodybuilder standard muscle, but it is possible to build muscle. Now, when I say bodybuilder standard muscle, I'm talking big, outrageous bulk. So if you take that kind of look out of the equation, it is still possible to build muscle. Now, when it comes to building muscle mass, there is a lot to consider, but at the very basic level, when it comes to the training side of it, you have to lift heavy for a small amount of reps while trying to minimize on sustained exertion in your training sessions. Now, there's a lot of science that goes into that statement and why it will help you build muscle mass, and there is a lot more to it than that with nutrition and supplements and all that sort of stuff, but that's the basic. So circuit training goes right against this, but it doesn't mean that you can't build muscle. By doing any resistance training, you're working your muscles. By doing circuit training, you're developing muscle function and stamina. This means that if you train with circuits regularly and consistently, you'll develop your muscle tone and function. Aesthetically, you'll be defined and athletic rather than pumped up, but you'll still be building muscle. And obviously, depending on genetics and who's actually looking at you and making the assumption, you might even come across as pumped up or bodybuilder-esque. And also, it's worth mentioning that it all depends on how you train and how you eat. But circuit training is very versatile, as we'll talk about later. But for now, I hope this serves as a good sort of general overview of the difference between bodybuilder muscle and developing muscle and tone. The next misconception: circuit training is not for the beginner. Okay, so this is how I see it. Circuit training is simply a form of training, and its nature makes it very adaptable. Personally, I could use circuit training to good effect with someone who's never even seen a dumbbell, and for someone who's an ultra marathon runner. So when it comes to your personal abilities, there are plenty of variables to change and tweak, so you can really tailor a workout to challenge you based on your specific goals. So no, this isn't true. Circuit training can absolutely be used by the beginner. So it's probably apparent that I'm a big advocate of home workouts, and I always encourage the beginner to start here before moving on to gym memberships and personal trainers and all that sort of stuff. Some of the reasons behind this is that home workouts are really accessible, less daunting than starting off in a gym, and they can also really help to just establish a training routine. Now, I always advise that you should find a progressive routine to follow, and I would say that a routine that focuses on sets and reps using single sets of 10 to 15 reps per exercise is a good start for a beginner, as we discussed right at the beginning. See, this way you'll be able to focus on perfecting the movement a bit better and getting used to one exercise before moving on to the next one and upping the stakes, if you like. But if you are a beginner, that doesn't mean that if you want to give circuit training a go right from the start, that you can't. See, if you're a beginner and you're focused on fat loss and muscle toning as your main goal, there's no reason that you can't get stuck into some form of circuit training right off the bat. And I'll cover a beginner's circuit training session that you can easily do from home later. But first, I want to talk about the benefits of circuit training for fat loss. So why is circuit training good for fat loss? Now, a lot of people look at circuit training as a form of cardio training, and that's all it's good for. But it's actually really good for endurance, muscle function, and tone too, as I mentioned earlier. So training in this way is generally pretty intense. During a circuit training session, you can decide to focus on specific muscle groups and throw in big compound movements like shoulder press, rows, squats and dips to hit your big muscle groups. And by performing these exercises in the form of a circuit, you'll be expending a lot of energy for each set that you do. And this will make it a lot harder because a squat, for instance, uses your quads, your hamstrings, your calves, your lower back as well, and you're concentrating on your posture. And it's a big movement, and these are big muscles. But doing, say, something like, tricep pushdowns, that just uses your triceps, and that's a lot easier. So one tricep pushdown is a lot easier than doing squats. So if you make a circuit of all the compound exercises, all the big movements, you do 10 exercises that focus on compound exercises, it will be a lot harder than doing a circuit with 10 exercises based on isolation exercises. So things like squats, shoulder press, push-ups, rows are all compound exercises, and obviously more muscles are used per rep. This means more energy is used, which means more calories used, which then that leads to more fat burned. So with all this in mind, that makes circuit training in this way being a really solid and all-round workout for fat burning and muscle toning. Also, one thing to consider is that if this type of exercise is done regularly, you'll be boosting your metabolism, changing your body composition, and as I've said many times before, and will say many times in the future, I imagine, more lean muscle means more fat burned, even when you're at rest. So as far as I'm concerned, the more lean muscle you can get, the better. Okay, so circuit training doesn't just have to be 12 exercises for 12 reps. There's loads of variables, and I want to talk about the variables of circuit training now, because I've mentioned cardio, targeting specific muscle groups, and given an example of a simple circuit, and this might get confusing. So circuit training is very, very versatile. You can be really creative when it comes to designing your own, and it can be great fun to challenge yourself with new ideas. So for example, here are some of the ways that you can approach it. So you could stick to an all-over body workout by using big compound movements, so you hit every muscle group, a bit like the example used at the beginning where you do a chest press, then squats, some shoulder presses. Now that's all good and it will be challenging, but the rabbit hole is pretty deep with circuit training options. So you could set up a circuit that only targets one muscle group. For example, this could be legs. Like a circuit where you just do a whole bunch of different leg exercises, hitting hamstrings, calves and quads. Or you could just set it up so it hits just quads. But yeah, you'd be a real sicko then. But each their own, that would be tricky. You could move away from counting reps per exercise as well, and use time slots instead. So you perform an exercise for say 10 or 20 seconds and then move right on to the next exercise for another 10 or 20 seconds. See, instead of counting reps. So this works well if you are more cardio focused. For example, you could use a step to do step-ups on for a time slot, then move on to burpees, or even have sprint slots or knees to chest jumps. And you could even put these in between each resistance exercise. And you could even mix big compound movements with a set number of reps with time slots or other exercises in the same circuit if you wanted to, or even add aspects of like sports specific training to the mix, like I don't know, throwing in a bit of a punch bag training session or a timed slot on a punch bag. There really is a whole world of options out there for you to try, test and tailor to your specific training needs. Before you start out though, I'd do exactly that. I decide what my goal was and create my own circuit plan around that goal. So as you can see, circuit training doesn't just have to be a simple routine that you have to just get through, and push yourself through and be bored by it. It can be really fun and you can make it as challenging as you want to. But with that in mind, if you are a beginner and you do want to try circuit training, this is where I would start. So I suggest picking compound exercises to target your big muscle groups, at first anyway. Now, this way, you'll get to know your body. It'll help you identify your strengths and weaknesses. For example, if you find push-ups hard, but squats easy, you know that you have strong legs, but you could do with focusing on your upper body. So in this case, it might be that your chest and triceps are weaker than your legs. Now, bodyweight exercises are great, but if you haven't done them before, they can be pretty tough. This is why I'd also advise you grab an exercise band kit. Now, an exercise band kit, getting into that sort of training is another Pandora's box of awesomeness. So all I'll say for now is that exercise bands are very good for everyone. If you're into exercise, you should have a set of these. They're pretty inexpensive and offer a lot for all levels of fitness. I actually have a couple of exercise band sets lying around, and I always use them if I can't get to the gym or I fancy a workout at home. I can just crack out the exercise bands, and the more you understand and learn about your body and its mechanics, the more you can utilize an exercise band kit and work out what's good for you and how to use it properly. They really are worth investing in, and they're really easy to get hold of, and as I said, inexpensive too. So it's great. It's a great bit of kit to have lying around. Okay, so back to beginner circuit training. So if I was a beginner, this is the circuit training that I would use, knowing what I know now. Okay, so the first exercise would be push-ups or push-ups on knees. Obviously, if you can't do full push-ups, do it on knees, or even over a bench. So you put your hands on a bench or a chair, make sure it's secure against the wall or something, and then your feet on the floor and do push-ups that way. Or you can get on your knees and do push-ups. Now the incline takes off a lot of body weight, so it does make it slightly easier, and it's good to progress from push-ups with trying to do full push-ups on your last set maybe. Okay, after push-ups, you want to move on to rows with an exercise band. Rows is a big movement. The exercise band kits, most of the exercise band kits that you get, you have a door anchor, and basically you put this behind a door, an exercise band through that door anchor, and you can do rows. You can do all sorts of stuff with that. So you sit on the floor with your exercise band through the door anchor, and then you do rows to your belly button. That's the second exercise. Then straight onto bodyweight squats. Bodyweight squats is an awesome exercise. Everyone should learn how to do this. Pretty self-explanatory, but if you don't know how to do it, it's worth taking the time to learn and make sure your posture's right and really perfect the movement, because you get this right and you'll be using a lot of muscles, and you can progress with all types of fitness if you know how to do squats properly. Okay, after squats, bicep curls. That's pretty easy. I mean, with an exercise band as well, you can do bicep curls, put it in the same position as you would do for the rows, and put some stirrups on, and you can do bicep curls with the door anchor. Okay, and then straight after bicep curls, you want to go on to shoulder press. Again, you can do this with an exercise band. You can even do it with tins of food, like small tins of food, or even if that's too heavy, you can just do shoulder press with no weight or no exercise band. It's just moving your arms above your head and do a press that way. I mean, a lot of people are weak in this area because there's no call for in everyday life, there's no call for lifting things above your head. So a lot of people will find a weakness in their shoulders when they start this kind of exercise routine. At the end, you can do crunches, tag crunches onto the end of that, but if you're training properly at the beginning, you're keeping your abs tight through every movement, so your abs are getting strengthened anyway. Your lower back's being worked. It's a nice option, but not 100% necessary at this point. I mean, some people might argue with me on that, but you can start to bring abs into it later on to strengthen them up. But for now, if you're doing all these exercises correctly, your abs will be tight and they will be being strengthened throughout the circuit. Okay, so this is a good start, and there are only 5 exercises, but they're all big movements. So it's a nice all-rounder circuit to get into if you are a beginner. As I said, if you do attempt this, remember to keep your abs tight throughout, and this will also help your core. And in the future, you can start adding different exercises to this. You can bring in core exercises as well. But I would start off with these 5 exercises as being the bread and butter, or your first introduction to circuit training. I would also, at this point, stay away from timed slots. I'd aim for counting reps. So if you go for 10 to 15 reps per exercise and have around 2 minutes between circuits. And if you want, you can go for up to 4 times, so up to 4 circuits. But start off with like 2 or 3 maybe. Now, if you're a more advanced trainer and you want to try circuit training for the first time, you might want to do the same routine but add a few isolation exercises in between the compound exercises, or add a timed stepping session in between resistance movements. So instead of having 5 exercises, you'd have 10, because you'd put a step-up session in between each movement. So just by mentioning that step-up session that you could put in between each movements, you can see how easy a circuit training is to adapt and progress. I mean, you might find that you're really strong with shoulder press, for instance, and you want to just use an isolation exercise for shoulders and work on your squats. So you might want to even put in 2 squat exercises in each circuit. And that's a possibility as well. Okay, so hopefully you found this useful, and I will bring it to a close here, but if you feel like this might be for you, I have written a book on circuit training which goes into a lot more depth and gives examples of like a full 6-week workout using circuit training exclusively. So obviously I'd love it if you check that out. It's part of the home workout series, and it's quite aptly named Home Workout Circuit Training. It does exactly what it says on the tin. But all of the exercise descriptions are demonstrated by myself and Mrs. Jim's Health and Muscle. But one of the great parts about this book is me and Mrs. Jim's Health and Muscle actually made it onto the front cover. So, we were very proud of that. Oh, and you'll also see that I had long hair back then, and I still maintain that it made me look way cool. So yeah, check out that, and as always, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks for listening to me, and I hope to speak to you again really soon, and all the best with your circuit training.